Hello, Shameless Picture Show podcast listeners. This is one of your co-hosts, Nick Richards, with some news. Might be good, might be bad, depending on how much you like my half of the conversation. Things have gotten a little crazy for me recently, and I've had to reprioritize how I spend my time. And unfortunately, as much as I absolutely love doing this show, the shame list is one of the things that I have to step down from for the time being. I hope to return someday, and in the meantime, I am entrusting full reign of the podcast in Michael's very, very capable hands. So I will be joining all of you now as listeners and fans as Michael continues to explore his and his other co-hosts' shame lists. It has been a real pleasure for me, and as much as I need to do this, it is truly heartbreaking, and I am going to miss it. I love you all. Keep listening. Keep checking things off of your own shame lists, because that's how we grow as viewers. Maybe that's a little too dramatic. Just a little bit too dramatic. But really, I'm going to miss this. And I hope you keep listening, keep enjoying, and hopefully you'll hear from me again in the future. Signing off.
Not be like a big Blu-ray person when they first had like the sort of, I don't know if you want to call it the HD wars with between Blu-ray and then
I didn't jump on until after that because I wanted to see who was gonna win.
And then I took a little while after that too, partially because I was in college. I'm like, oh, it's cheaper, DVDs are cheaper. But then the other part too was some of the first Blu-rays I don't feel like they weren't good, or I wasn't used to them looking so sharp that it didn't feel right.
And not to pat my own back, but me setting your TV also helped with that, some of that too.
Yeah, that's true.
Because like a lot of times when you buy a new TV, they're super they're over sharp and over bright, and heck, sometimes it's like even the jump to like HD. Like first, like my mom when she first got an HD TV and she turned on like Turner Classic Movies, and she's like, "Why doesn't it fill the screen?" I'm like, it's a wider screen, and this movie is not meant to be so wide.
I felt like such a silly person when now looking back at it too, because in high school I was the person who bought I bought my movies on full screen because we had a full screen TV.
Well, you had a full screen TV. You're playing to your strengths.
Right. I'm like, why would I get widescreen? No one needs that.
The worst ones, if you get some old DVDs, some of the widescreen DVDs, are widescreen but still in 4:3.
Jeez.
So it's like you still got the black bars on the sides and then on the top. So it's like you haven't even small. Like, what am I looking at?
That's awesome.
It's the big reason I rebought The Doors, because my DVD copy was like that, and I was like, I can't watch this. And then you could zoom in, but then everything looks garbagey anyways. And I was like, and I'm used to garbagey pictures. I watch VHS tapes, but like I go into that intentionally for the aesthetic. You put in a movie because you legitimately want to watch and you can't stand to look at it. It's kind of heartbreaking a little bit.
Speaking of The Doors, I guess, and speaking of this podcast, that movie, I guess, is technically on my shame list.
You've never seen The Doors?
Never seen The Doors. I've only seen a few Oliver Stone films in general.
As a whole, I tend to like Oliver Stone's biopics more than his other films. It's not to say I like every biopic and I dislike every other non-biopic, but as a whole, I seem to enjoy those more. And Oliver Stone gets a bad rap for a lot of valid reasons. Yeah. But one thing I will never say is I'll never say he's a bad filmmaker. He's a filmmaker that I don't necessarily always agree with the politics in his films. But it's weird that he was at a strange period of time where he was adding like real art house sensibilities into big budget movies. Yep. Like there's some scenes in The Doors where you watch, or like say like Natural Born Killers. Like there's some really artsy, highbrow shit happening in those movies, and you're like, wait, how did this get onto big screens and seen by the masses?
Well, even like Wall Street has got style to it. Mm-hmm. You know, he's a filmmaker who's got style.
Yeah,
and that's. In many ways, I go back and forth whether style is important because I'm a big fan of like Clint Eastwood. I love a lot of his films, but to me, he's a filmmaker who doesn't have a style.
Yeah, he's kind of like if you look at his idols, like someone like Don Siegel, who directed Dirty Harry, his style was not having a style.
Yeah,
he is adaptable.
Yeah, I like when filmmakers are able to do that, but. You know, then again, it is nice to throw in someone like Stone or throw in someone like Scorsese, and you know who made the film based on what, just looking at it.
And Scorsese's an interesting choice because he's a filmmaker. He's a chameleon where he can have his, he's got a Scorsese style, very influenced off the French New Wave and just... where he wants you to see his style, things like Casino and Goodfellas and Wolf of Wall Street. But then he's another filmmaker who can be just as subtle and make a movie that its style is not noticing.
Cape Fear.
Mm-hmm. And then, the topic of our episode, Steven Spielberg, he's kind of in a weird in-between where he's a filmmaker who you don't realize how much style he has until you start seeing it.
Yeah, I think he's like the ultimate chameleon.
Yeah, because you look at it and it's like when I first started getting into Spielberg's films, and I was like early on in film school before I really understood style and what went into it, and I was like, oh, Spielberg, as much as I like his films, he doesn't have a style, he doesn't have a look. But now it's like he's got such a very obvious style that I can, even if I can just see a scene of something. And say nothing like iconic like Indiana Jones or whatever, but if I see a movie of his that I say I didn't realize he directed right away, I can probably instantly tell you it's him just by the way he moves the camera.
Yeah, well, and everyone talks about the Spielberg Oneer now. It's sort of like become this big thing that he's now known for, even though he's been doing it for years.
I thank every frame of painting for that big part of it because they made it they put it in the lexicon of cinephiles.
Absolutely. But I think what's interesting about his Oneers, and it now makes sense. You had introduced me to the Spielberg documentary that's on HBO, but his Oneers more than anything are economical. Which makes complete sense when you realize that he came up through TV.
Yeah.
Where everything has to be shot relatively quickly. But he was also someone that when he was in TV, he still wanted to be noticed. So he'd have little visual flares and stuff.
He was the guy that was like, oh, you're the guy that likes lenses and dolly tracks, but no, it makes sense. And before I actually introduced the episode proper, like one thing I find fascinating about his Oneer is it's not like everyone cites that Oneer at the beginning of Goodfellas where they're going through the kitchen and through the restaurant, the scene I'm talking about.
Yep.
Everyone cites that as being like, oh, that's like. When we're in film school, our buddies who wanted to be cinematographers, that was the one that got them off. But it's like it's style for the sake of style. Whereas a Spielberg Oneer, it's like how much information can I convey in this? it's same thing of like when Brian De Palma does a oneer. It's because Brian De Palma comes from the school of thought of the more I have to cut, the more amateur I look. It's like if I can't tell almost everything important in this scene in the establishing shot, my establishing shot's not good enough.
Nice.
And then he cuts in for emotional purposes, and that's and just Spielberg does the same thing. He just moves his camera.
Yeah.
Where so De Palma likes a oneer where little more of a static oneer where his framing is the more interesting aspect of it. Where Spielberg is like, I'll move the camera as much as I need to get information in.
When you're shooting that, do you cover the whole thing in the wide and
cover?
No. I'm saying just did you shoot the whole scene in the wide and then do her close up, or did you know that you're going to go right on that cut, so you just cut the scene and you go in and just do what you know you're going to use?
Well, in many instances, you set up, the wide shot to see what the actors are doing. It's a 2-character scene. And when you do character scenes, you want to let the actors dominate the stage. So you you watch what they do. Much like a location, you see what they're doing, and then you figure out where to put the camera in order to maximize the effect of what they're doing. And then as you go through the scene and you watch in the master shot, you see them doing things that you say, well, maybe I should go in closer for that. And when Nancy did that, I'd probably say, I should, this is a good time to cut into her face.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I shoot everything, seeing as I have no action shots. But
Yeah, but you look at the scene.
Yeah, you
watch the actors. They do things,
I think because you do so many kind of, in some cases, epic camera work, and you have, I mean, it's kind of even iconic the way certain shots that you tend to use in sequences in your movies. But I struck in Blowout, there's a lot of just great 2 shots with just the actors in the room.
Absolutely.
With John and Nancy there
are places for those 2 shots. You just have to figure out what they're doing and where it fits into the scenario.
Right, and there are not a lot of close-ups. I mean, it's like it's the whole thing of using the close-up when it really counts.
Well, in Casualties of War, I think I have one big close-up is when, Michael Fox is, witnessing the rape scene. It's the only close-up in the movie, so if you look at older movies, you'll realize, my God, they're photographing their whole bodies. They're letting them use their hands and walk around. And instead of this television thing where everybody, we were watching that movie the other day. What was that movie we were watching the other day? It was like one close-up after another. It was relentless.
Awful.
And it was like tighter and tighter. Yeah. 3 people talking at a table, bam, 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 bam. It's like, give me a break. I mean, the close-up is a great thing to use, but it's like banging a drum over and over and over again.
In the movie we're going to be talking about today, there is a kind of a Spielberg oneer, but it is the most Scorsese Spielberg oneer that he has.
Well, I'm going to introduce the show,
of course,
and then we can talk about it. So, as is the custom on this show, I take a sip of my coffee.
Warning! This movie podcast actually discusses movies. Be aware that it may discuss any of the following elements: endings, surprise twists, unexpected cameos, and all manner of spoilers. If this doesn't appeal to you, why listen to a movie podcast? Without further ado, please enjoy our feature presentation, The Shameless Picture Show.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Shameless Picture Show. I am Michael Viers, and with me, for the first time ever, is a very special guest host. My wrestle buddy, movie friend, best man, and best friend, the Golden Lover,
Kyle Arpke.
I went with the Golden Lover because I was just watching a story arc retrospective on Kenny Omega and Kota Ibushi, and their tag team name was the Golden Lovers. Yeah. So I think it's a deep pull, but I figure Kyle might enjoy that.
I love it. That's pretty great.
Me and you have been friends since film school.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say near the middle of film school is when we became friends, and we bonded over the fact that we both love professional wrestling. I think CM Punk is what kind of sparked this friendship, and the fact that while we both definitely have our own pretentious tastes, Like, you can't have gone through 4 to 5 years of film school and not have at least some pretentious taste. But a big thing that bonded us together was we both like big budget movies for the most part. Yeah, we can be hard on them, but like sometimes you just don't want to watch Breathless. You want to just put something fun and we find the art in those big budget films.
Yeah, I think sort of I've been thinking about like what draws me to films, and I think it's films that you can tell that they tried, whether they tried to do something different or they tried to draw you into a story that is otherwise very I don't necessarily want to say mundane, but is generic. You know, you think about a lot of like action or the big blockbuster movies, and there's a lot of very generic plots. But if the filmmaking behind it can get you to forget about that, to either enjoy yourself or to feel the emotional pull of the characters, whether, you know, through cinematography, just through good editing, sound, music, acting, all that stuff, then I can be invested in it. If it's a movie that is generic, like has a generic story and is shot generically, then I sort of go, oh, I'm not a big fan of this.
Yeah. And like I feel like there's definitely an even ground between them where you can have something that satisfies both sides of your brain, the entertainment side and the high art side. And actually, speaking of Steven Spielberg, there's a right before he made Jaws, they asked him the question. I was like, we know you can make films, but can you make a movie? And our topic for today, I think, is when he really started flexing, you know, showing that he can find both. I guess we should stop burying the lead. On today's episode, we'll be discussing Steven Spielberg's first feature film, the made-for-TV movie Duel. Produced in 1971 for ABC's Movie of the Week, Duel tells the harrowing tale of a drive through the desert gone awry. David Mann is a middle-aged, meek salesman on his way to handle some business. His leisure drive becomes stressful once he finds himself behind a larger tanker truck. Not wanting to be late, Mann passes the truck and thus begins a cat-and-mouse tale that pits man versus machine. Pun intended. It begins harmless with Mann and the truck casually and not so casually passing each other, but as Mann's stress rises, so do the stakes. The truck is obviously not going to let these indiscretions go, and the film becomes a high-speed thriller about one person's will to survive a truck that wants him off the road. The film was written by Richard Matheson, based on his story by the same name, which, funny enough, was actually originally published in Playboy magazine. The film was thrilling and was considered one of the best TV movies ever made and helped put Spielberg on the map as a film director. The film was photographed by Jack A. Marta, who's primarily a television cinematographer, but really shows his eye for cinematic visuals. Scored by Billy Goldenberg and stars Dennis Weaver as David Mann, with a supporting cast that features Jacqueline Scott, Eddie Firestone, and Lucille Benson.
Get back in the bus, please. Please, come on. Come on, back in the bus. Hey, stop!
Wonder if Eddie Firestone is the Harry Fonda lookalike.
Eddie Firestone was, remember, like when he first gets to the diner and he crashes his car into that, and the guy's like, "Are you okay?"
Gotcha.
That's Eddie Firestone. He is a big time character actor from a lot of westerns and everything. Jacqueline Scott was also another character actor, played his wife, and Lucille Benson you remember when we watched Halloween 2?
Yeah.
And like the original Halloween 2, not
Right.
Rob Zombie's. And there was that woman who was making a sandwich and everything, and it was Michael Stalk in the background. She was the sandwich woman. She played also like the reptile woman in this movie.
Okay.
So fun fact. She also reprises that role in Steven Spielberg's 1941.
Nice.
Yeah.
That reptile scene, by the way. I mean, you know that I have an absolute, fear of snakes, especially any poisonous snakes.
I do too.
That one rattlesnake, I was just watching it, and Jess was just watching with me, my girlfriend, and snake jumps and cool, and she's of course laughing at me.
But yet at the same time, like,
it's a good scare.
I also felt for this, like not only the snakes, but the woman's like, these snakes don't deserve to get run over by a giant truck.
See, that's where I kind of gained some sympathy for the truck and the truck driver.
The one time you're gonna side with the truck driver.
The only thing though that bothered me was like all those snakes are now not in a cage. So,
but they're in a desert, so that's where they came from.
Yeah, it's true.
So this week's episode is a little different because normally I do this show with my normal co-host Nick, but he's had to take a temporary leave of absence, and out of respect for him, whenever I used to have guests on, I never used to do the format of the show that we created together with anyone else. He's given me his blessing, so I figured, well, it's the first time I've done this format without him, realistically. I figured, well, I've been meaning to see Duel. I've had your copy forever. And I was like, this seems like a perfect excuse for me to watch it and then discuss it, because you're one of the few people I know who I've had as many conversations as we have had about Steven Spielberg. Well, and like dissecting him and his career. And I thought, well, I need to watch this movie anyway. So
I'm very honored to be a part of this sort of, not just this podcast, but this version of the podcast where we talk about things that are on people's shame list, because when you told me about this idea, when you started it, I thought it was just a really smart way of doing a movie podcast. There's so many, there are so many movie podcasts out there.
Yeah.
But to like go in and be like, everyone has films that they want to see that they haven't seen, and to like make a podcast about like, okay, we're actually going to go through and check all these boxes and see all these movies. I think it's just fun.
Sometimes movies just escape you. Like I probably would have seen it eventually, but I wouldn't have seen The Godfather without this show. And there's nothing against it. It's just one of those movies that it's been on my list for a while, but there was nothing pushing me to see it. There wasn't like this nagging internally that I need to see The Godfather. And I was like, oh, it'll happen eventually. And especially because this happened to me all the time in film school. Someone would be like, oh, have you seen The Godfather? Yeah, it's great. You don't want to admit the fact that you haven't seen something. So you're like, you lie.
Yeah.
And because it's almost like this fear of like rejection that like, oh, I haven't seen this big, because it still happens to me, like where like I've got, since I have seen so many movies, I've got family members who go, how have you not seen this? You've seen everything. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I haven't, and you're making me want to see this movie less.
Yeah. So when did Duel get put on your shame list?
Funny enough, I guess technically it's been on my shame list because eventually I want to work through Spielberg's entire filmography. I'm not necessarily working on it in order, just filling in the gaps. So it's always kind of been there. But I think it was talking with you one time when you're kind of confessing your love for it.
Okay.
That like, well, because all I knew about it was a car chase movie, and I happen to like car chase movies quite a bit, even though I'm not much of a car guy. But it was a movie that no one really ever talked about from Spielberg's career.
Yeah,
part of it because it's so early on. So there's probably a lot of people just assume Jaws was his first movie.
Right. But it is a TV movie.
Yeah. Well,
so some people might not consider it one, even though it definitely is a film.
Yeah, like he did this. He did Sugarland Express.
Yeah.
I think there might have been something in between those two. I don't remember. But those were the two big ones before he did Jaws. But like just hearing you talk about how much you like it, and then you happen to have a copy of it, I'm like, well, shit.
Yeah, when I first saw it, I wasn't expecting a lot out of it because I'm like, what can you do with a what can you really do with a car being chased by a truck for a full-length movie? And I will say it's not a perfect film by a stretch of imagination, but it's, you know, and hearing that it's a TV movie, my expectations for it were rather low going into it, but it surprisingly holds its own, and it surprisingly, for a TV film, has a lot of style, which I think is contributed completely to Spielberg and what he wanted that movie to do for his career going forward.
Mm-hmm. And he also, like, there people say there's three types of directors. There's the ones who are really technical. Yep. There's the ones who really technical, and I guess because that's style heavy.
Yep.
There's the ones who know how to schmooze the big wigs and get their way into jobs, and there's the ones that can work with actors. Mm-hmm. And he's kind of a mixture of all three.
Yeah.
And while he made a film that with essentially one actor, you know, there's supporting people around it, but essentially one actor, fascinating.
Yeah,
it's not an easy task.
Not at all. To have it be one actor, working against a piece of machinery, kind of, it's quite the task, you know, for your first film to do something like that. I apologize if you happen to hear a lawnmower in this recording.
Yeah, I'm not recording my usual studio. That's a lie. It's not a studio. It's a bedroom. But you know, we're gonna make do. We're gonna make do with the sound. Just like if you hear any tapping of the mics, because I'm not using my normal mic and I'm actually holding one. So, you know, ignore the sound of the mics. But no, I being on my shame list, like I said, I guess I kind of knew I was gonna enjoy the film anyways, but like I said, I felt like I was white knuckle the entire for most of the movie, and it's got a very similar quality to what I loved so much. I would say Quentin Tarantino's Death Proof, where he's able to make one long car chase work.
Okay.
Where it never seems dull, and when he does choose to get off, and then they do choose to get off the road, it's some really great character building moments.
Yeah. One thing that I actually really think helps this movie, at least for me for some reason, is you know pretty early on that it's not just like a truck that's trying to drive him off the road. Like, it's not this weird mystical truck.
Mm-hmm.
There's clearly a person inside. You know, he's waving at him,
mm-hmm.
and, you know, up to his own mischief.
There's something sadistic behind that person.
Right. You know that it's the element that's chasing him is human, and the fact that there's just this kind of murderous, rampaging person behind this truck is it grounds the story, I want to say.
It grounds it, but at the same time, it's a weird mixture where the movie's grounded because you realize it's a person.
Mm-hmm.
And like even little things where, like, you know, the truck will tell him to pass him. It's like, oh, maybe he's gonna let up, and he just uses it as a way to bait him into something else.
Yeah.
But there is almost like, because you never see the driver and it personified as a truck, that there is like this almost mystical element to it. And I think a big part of that is I don't know how familiar you are with Richard Matheson.
Not super.
He's best known for writing the book I Am Legend.
Oh, okay.
But he was also a big time contributor for The Twilight Zone.
Nice.
And you watch this movie, and it feels like a long, extended Twilight Zone episode.
Totally. Yeah, you're totally right about that.
Where it's human but mystical at the same time. And the idea for the story, from what I'm told, came from, of all times, it came the night that JFK was assassinated. Richard Matheson was driving home with a producer friend of his, and they're like up in Laurel Canyon in California, so it's really tight roads and everything. And there's a truck just coming up behind them, blaring his horn and almost coming in contact with their bumper a couple of times just to fuck with them. And he said it's disturbed him so bad that he went home and just recited it all into a microphone so he didn't forget it, and was trying to pitch it for like TV shows like Twilight Zone-esque type TV shows, and everyone turned it down. So he eventually wrote it into a short story, and they made it into a movie.
Yeah, I didn't know any of that. That's really cool because it's funny, like, both the good and the bad of Twilight Zone is in this film.
Yeah.
Like, this, one of the things that is, like, makes the film feel very dated is this use of voiceover.
Yes.
It's a very, like, it's unnecessary. I get that they're trying to, like, get you into the character's mind, but I almost feel like
It's a little on the nose.
Yeah, it's on the nose, and his conflicts are very easy conflicts for an audience to understand, that you don't necessarily have to throw it in their face.
I feel like that was chosen because it is on television.
I agree.
And especially at the time, television was for the masses.
Right.
It's kind of like the old Hitchcock adage where it's like he could make a film that does not have, say, something like narration and grip 75-80% of the audience, or he can add it and get 99% of the audience.
Yeah.
So, like, I get it. I also feel it's unnecessary. I feel like, if anything, they could have, like, if they really wanted to give us something else to chew on, like, take sound bites from stuff that happened to her, kind of like in Psycho, when Marion Crane's driving and she's not thinking to herself, she's hearing all the conversations previously in the day.
Yep.
And I feel, but same time, I watched the theatrical version of this film, which is longer than the one that was on television, and things like the conversation with his wife were added later on.
Okay, gotcha.
So might not have worked.
It's interesting because I do feel like the film is a little long. The sequences hold up, but they do get the suspense sequences of him against the truck. They hold up for the most part, but it does just stretch out a little more than
even the very ending. We're gonna skip around, and there's gonna be spoilers in this. Even the very ending, where, like, the truck is, like, in agony after it falls off the cliff, and Spielberg defends that choice, which I don't think was a bad choice at all. I just thought it could be cut down, but at the same time, I don't know if it was originally shorter because, the producers told him it's not long enough for a movie, and you need to extend the film if we're gonna play it in a theater anywhere. So
there you go. Yeah.
Who knows? But no, I agree. I feel like there's times where it was a little long, and some sequences, and I think it's the sequences that were added later on. I didn't mind the conversation of him and his wife. I thought that was telling. The scene with the school bus, I didn't really get behind.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was an added scene. Okay. But
what is interesting about that scene with he and his wife is I'm shocked that it wasn't in the TV version, because it roots that character finally. You go, okay, so he's got somewhere to go, and if he doesn't go to this meeting, he's going to lose this account. But if he doesn't get back to his wife in time, she's going to be angry with him. She's already angry with him. So it's really the only scene in the whole film that you get to understand who the character is.
No, it is. And, like, you tell from that scene of his wife that, he didn't stand up for her.
Yeah.
He's a more, like I said in my description, he's a meek person. He doesn't like confrontation. That all builds up to what, like it's such a satisfying moment near the end of the film where, like, he gets into the car with confidence, puts on his awesome sunglasses, and is like, I'm going to go head on with this fucking truck.
Yeah.
And I was like, that felt earned because of that conversation later on.
Yeah, totally.
One thing I thought was a little strange was at the very, very beginning, like, when we're getting bits and pieces of, like, the radio shows and everything, and we get this one person, like, I assume it's like a morning talk show and they're doing, like, comedy bits and whatnot.
Yep.
But it's like it's supposed to be a really meek person calling an insurance company and complaining about how his wife was wearing the pants in the family. Like, my first, like, I imagine it was like I said, I really think it's one of those, shock jock type things when they call businesses and do characters and whatnot. No reaction from him the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like later on, another show, he's laughing constantly. I'm wondering if that was put there because it drives too close to home for him, so he doesn't find it funny.
Well, it's interesting too because later in the film, not much later in the film, he's at that gas station, and I think there's another bit. I don't remember the exact words, but the gas station attendant is saying something along the lines of like being the sort of breadwinner of the family or having the pants on, and he goes, "Oh, not in my house."
Yeah,
so,
he makes some comments. Yeah,
so it's clearly like
he needs this for himself in a weird way.
Right. And I guess in the TV version, if they don't have that scene with his wife, that is literally the only like backstory you give the character, which is a fascinating thing.
Yeah. Because, like I said, for me, this movie works because of that conversation scene of his wife. Yep. Not only did I like just the way that Spielberg shot his stuff of him on the phone.
Yeah.
Like, I'll talk about that a little more in a minute. Just the way that he 4:3 screen, he really found a way to fill the screen. But like I said, this is going to go back towards like the mystical element and the reason why like it feels like a Twilight Zone episode, and because Richard Matheson is very much like a morality play type science fiction writer, where it's like, so here's this guy, he's a salesman, he is late for an appointment, his wife is nagging him, he doesn't feel any confidence in himself, and at his lowest point, here comes an obstacle for him to overcome. So it's like, while it's trying to kill him, if you want to think like really high concept, it was put there for a reason.
Definitely. Yeah, it definitely was.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you want to, you can go right into that. That style of that scene is pretty...
Yeah, especially because TV at the time, and I say at the time, but this was true all the way up until, I want to say, as little as 5 years ago, where... there was always like, the screen's too small, you can't do anything creative, it's just close. De Palma says TV was the land of close-ups, and that's the reason he didn't like using a lot of close-ups, because he said it made it feel like you're a TV director. You have a bigger frame, use the frame. That being said, Spielberg found a way to, and it's not just even in this movie, I've went back and watched clips of some of the TV episodes he's directed, and he finds a way to fill the frame in a very interesting way. This little things like framing characters, like when the woman was doing her laundry, she left the laundry door open and you can see through it. It frames him in a very interesting way.
Yep.
The way he'll split the screen with David Mann in the background and the truck split down the middle, all things that for all intents and purposes TV directors normally didn't do, because Spielberg came in at thinking about it cinematically.
Right.
And like you still get it today. It's like, well, the small screen's not a place for things like that, but true filmmakers say, it doesn't matter what size the screen is, you shoot it cinematically.
What I tried to bring to TV was a lesser emphasis on the close-up, because the movies I learned from were really about master shots and letting the audience kind of look at the overview and kind of be their own film editor sometime. I used to love those old movies like Orson Welles, certainly, and John Ford, shot wide. Howard Hawks shot wide. But when Hawks and Ford went in for the close-up, it was to tell a story. It was to drum home a point. And they used the close-up as a powerful tool of narrative storytelling. Television seemed to use the close-up because screens were so small, they wanted people to see what the actors were saying. They wanted to get mouth movement, so they would shoot all the TV shows like that. So when I came to television, I kind of went back to wider shots. And it got me, in a strange way, noticed, simply because I was shooting wider than most television directors. So I look back at it and say, I was so hungry back then. I was so ambitious. I was so excited about having been given this chance. It was a great experience for me to start out in TV that way.
Well, yeah, and it's, there's two ways to convey information. You can do it the old Russian way where the montage, where you're cutting two images.
And crazy Russians just fucking with images.
That's right. And you're creating meaning from those two images being cut together, or you put the camera in a place where you can convey multiple ideas into one. Or in this case, instead of cutting from the lead character to the truck, you're putting them both in the same frame. And he's doing that constantly.
However, You mentioned a little bit, you were kind of touching on the Spielberg one there again, but before we get on to that, because that's kind of a topic of its own, he kind of does an interesting mix of the two. Where I'm a big fan of the French New Wave, and if you study it enough, you can see its influence everywhere. You can see it as overtly, as overdone as like Tarantino used to do it. But then even something as simple as like where Spielberg, I think in all intents and purposes, is a very elegant style or way he likes to move the camera. But there's times near the end when he was amping up the pacing, where like the music and the images were cutting together in a way to just kind of amp up your heart rate. Like it was cutting between. It was the sequence where his car's starting to die, and it's cut between the gauges on his car to him back to the truck, and it's constantly cutting. And because he does it so sparingly, it feels earned.
Totally. Well, that's a big thing, I think, because this film is almost like, in many ways, it feels like a horror movie.
Yeah.
Because it's building tension, releasing it. It has one or two jump scares in it, which is kind of fun. But what I think all horror movie directors need to learn in terms of building suspense is you always have to be what you're doing now, like what you're doing early in the film, cinematically, shot selection and edit wise, affects everything later on.
Yes.
So if you're doing that sort of crazy cut style early in the film, it won't pay off. And I shouldn't even just say it's a horror movie thing. I think it's a movie thing in general. If you're doing that style later on, it's not going to feel as impactful when you do it, or if you do it early, it's not going to feel as impactful later.
It's like telling a joke.
Yeah.
If you flub up and go right to the punchline, the joke's ruined.
Right.
It's given an example of sometimes when this is done subtly, when people aren't even realizing, is when things like that happen. It was like, for example, it gets a lot of crap, but Rob Zombie's Halloween, his first one, an intentional thing that he decided to do was he shot the entire first half of the film all on dollies and steady cams, but it wasn't until Michael killed his sister then he started moving it off and slowly became less and less steady cam and was doing it all handheld.
Nice.
Something that most people aren't going to notice, but it's there to help tell the story. And I think it's the reason why there's some action films nowadays I can't get behind, because they don't have a clear idea of what they're doing with their style. Never once in this film did I feel like Spielberg didn't know where he wanted to put the camera. He shot car chases in a way that is very aesthetically pleasing. He'd hold on shots. Like if he rigged a camera to the hood of the car, he stayed on that shot for a while.
Yep.
Or a camera in from inside the car, he stayed on that shot for a while. And it's honestly, in the one car chase sequence in Solo, that's how Ron Howard shot his sequences too. You watch that opening speeder chase in Solo and you watch Duel, they shoot their chases in the same way.
Man, I didn't even think about that, but it is totally true. And I love, Solo's a movie that's it's a very okay film, but that speeder chase in the beginning is a great.
It's there's a moment where he's I don't remember the actor who played Solo. I can't think of his name. They have the camera just right on the hood, facing right towards him, and everything's and they just hold on him for, I don't want to say uncomfortably long, because it just feels uncomfortably long compared to how everyone else does it. Mm-hmm. But I was like, oh, that's a very French Connection bullet way to shoot a chase.
Yeah, it felt very old school in a way, but it was refreshing.
There's a lot of things in that movie that did.
Yeah, totally.
Like the Godfather-esque lighting, the fact that Woody Harrelson looked like fucking Errol Flynn. It just felt like a man who loves movies. But we're not here to talk about Solo. But there's just an example of how these I don't want to say there's a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things, but the ways that work still work.
Yep, that's definitely true. I think that's it's weird because as a filmmaker, you're trying to study what works and what will always work, but then also what used to work and what doesn't work anymore. I think, not to go too off topic.
No, we go on tangents all the time on this show. Feel free.
But, I think going back to horror, what scared people in the 70s doesn't scare people today. I don't know a whole lot of people that are scared by like Halloween anymore, and that's not because it's a bad movie, because it's not. It's a very solid film, but it's just we as a film viewers, we have evolved past that type of scare.
Yeah.
And horror is a genre that has to constantly reinvent itself because its audiences are getting used to the types of scares that's throwing at you.
Yeah, like if they were to make Duel today, it would essentially be a Fast and the Furious movie. It would lose those horror elements, I think, and would amp up the action. Because what really works for me in Duel is the fact that it's not a horror film. It's not really an action film. I don't like the term thriller. Always just feels weird to me, because a thriller is just a horror film that people don't want to admit is a horror film.
Agreed.
It rides this in between that works so well, and part of it is because of Matheson's script, and combined with like the way that Spielberg works the scene. And a thing that works so well is, majority of films are going to have edits. They're going to have cuts. Spielberg uses it less and less, unless it's necessarily needed, because every time there's a cut in a film, it gives you a chance to breathe. But the longer you hold on something, you hold your breath.
Yep.
So that's why for a lot of people, like the horror films, and even not just horror films, but kind of what we're talking about, that's the reason a lot of horror films don't work for people, is because they're too sporadic. And the reason, say, something like The Conjuring works so well is because it's unrelentless for how long it'll hold on to something.
Totally. Well, it's so funny because you look at Duel and I feel like that's the same thing. I mean, that's sort of what you're saying, but yeah, if you watch that film, those chase sequences are relentlessly long, but you're sucked into it because you don't know where it's going next. And that's what makes good suspense in general. But the way that you do that, is if you're able to hold on to things for longer. I think my favorite sequence of suspense ever is in the original Mission Impossible, where
like the sweat drops.
Yeah, the sweat drop scene where they're breaking into to get the Knox list, and that is, I haven't gone and like counted how many shots there are. There certainly are a good number of shots, but that sequence primarily works because you're holding on to these shots. You're framing them so that you can just let the shot play out and let the audience.
The camera doesn't cut until it. This is like a highbrow way of thinking. The camera, the film doesn't cut until it needs to.
Yeah, and Duel, to an extent, I think, does a lot of that. What is fascinating about Duel, when you think about Duel and then you think about the fact that like a movie or two later he's doing Jaws, you barely see the shark. Duel, you're seeing the beast the whole time.
It's funny, when Spielberg first was trying to pitch himself for Jaws, because the story goes that he stole the script from Zanuck's office and was written, and he's like, you have to let me direct this, and apparently he described it as, it's Duel in the water.
Well, yeah, I think it's funny watching that. Everyone should go watch the HBO doc on Spielberg if you can, because what is both, I don't know, part of it kind of broke my heart a little bit to learn this, but it is kind of fascinating at the same time. Is Jaws was supposed to show a lot of the shark. So this whole like idea of Spielberg's genius of holding back like and not showing the creature like happened because the creature didn't work. They get to set and the creature didn't work. Otherwise, he wouldn't be known as that genius.
I'm
of holding the
surprised it
suspense.
breaks your heart, because he's essentially a deity in filmmaking, where everyone just thinks, oh, he's a genius, he gets everything right every time. for me, it humanizes him in a way and makes it. I can relate more to him now. He's a person that wanted to make a film and had a clear idea of what he wanted to do, and that clear idea was thrown out the window. So he's like, well, I need to get creative and come up with something. And especially if you go with watching Duel, it's like I can relate to that movie so hard because like here's a young filmmaker who's trying to make a cool movie, who's wearing his influences on his sleeve, so much so that he's such a huge Hitchcock fan. The score sounded like the score for Psycho.
Yeah, it did. Totally. I mean, there's a complete...
Not in a bad way, but
Yeah.
it's just like... It felt like he really wanted the music for Psycho.
Yeah.
So that's what that does for me was that I feel like if anything, it just solidified that he's a man with very clear vision who's able to adapt.
I think that's a fair point. It's a very fair point.
One thing I will comment on, because I still want to get onto the topic of more about the Spielberg one that you're going to talk about. I love listening to interviews with him. So like when he shot Duel, the producer's like, well, let's do a process screen, fake car, and do it that way. And Spielberg's like, no, we need to shoot actually out in the roads and make it real and everything. And the producer's like, if you can do that in 10 days, go for it. But you need to at least do us a favor and shoot the driving process shots so we can fall back on that. He's like, cool.
First of all, I didn't quite know how I was going to achieve this in 10 days. They were giving me 10 days to shoot about 73 minutes of film with commercials. It fills out the hour and a half of the ABC Movie of the Week format. I didn't quite know how I could do this thing in 10 days. They assigned me a highly regarded production manager named Wallace Worsley. And Wallace is kind of gruff and tough. He was a pussycat on the inside, but on the outside he was a gruff and tough person who looked at me and often gave these derisive snorts of, yeah, prove it. Prove you can make this into a movie, because if you can't, your history, son, will bring somebody else in who can. And I really respected that he took a hard-line position with me, because I said to him, I'm going to shoot this all on location. And he said to me, you cannot shoot a movie of this scale on location in 10 days. You need to send somebody else out to shoot all these plates and do it on a soundstage with process. And I said, Wally, I don't want to shoot this if I have to go inside. It's going to look fake. You can look out all the windows of the car. It won't be a chase. It'll be a guy comfortably sitting on a soundstage with bad process out the windows, which is always out of sync with the way the grips move the car. The car moves this way, the process goes that way. It never works. And Wally said, if you spend the first half of the first day of shooting plates, so we have those banked, and then if you stay on schedule for the first 3 days, then you can shoot the whole thing on location. Otherwise, you got to come back to the studio. And I said, okay. And that was the thing I had to prove, that I could stay on schedule, so I didn't have to go back inside to make a real fake-looking movie inside.
And then Jaws came about, and he's like, oh, I don't want to shoot this in a tank. I want to shoot this on the ocean. But then, like, he'd go later on when he goes and makes like Indiana Jones, because of the style he's trying to ape. He's like, let's do process shots. Let's do things on stages, and because that's the style he's trying to mimic. But I loved it early on. He was all like, man, this needs to be pure cinema. And then he's like, what's easier?
Well, I think it is sort of interesting. People talk a lot about this with George Lucas, where he's someone who, quote unquote, turned into the thing that he hated, which I think is, to some extent, is true, and to some extent it's not. But with Spielberg, he's certainly changed, at least in his approach to action, and how he does it. From going from realism and sticking, to practical stunts, to then doing Indiana Jones, where things are a little bit more CGI based. He then completely flips the script for something like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull or Ready Player One, where it's just CGI thrown at you all the time, and that's sort of a shame.
Yeah, and like, wow, I would still say I like Spielberg still a lot, but yeah, he has kind of become the thing he hates, and part of that is because I think when he was young and idealistic. But like, I know like you're saying, people always say Lucas is the one that became what he hated. Lucas has always been that person. You watch THX 1138, he was that person from the beginning.
Yeah.
And he always knew the type of filmmaker he was. If anything, the one film that's unlike anything else he's made was American Graffiti.
That's the one on my shame list.
It's on mine too.
Oh, great! I own it, so we can watch that.
That could be next time because I might need more. I might need more guest hosts once in a while.
Nice.
It's funny, like how much like Lucas Spielberg has become. One thing I will say, like tangential to Duel, people need to leave fucking George Lucas alone.
That's true.
Like,
yeah,
I'm getting sick of hearing Star Wars fans being like, "Oh, he ruined my childhood," and things. It's like, because like I used to know a guy who said he would never watch Star Wars again because it's not what he remembered being. It's like, I was like, if you really ever loved that franchise, your love for it wouldn't waver because they added in some CGI creatures.
Right.
I don't know.
Listeners should know if I am brought back on to this podcast, we will probably go on Star Wars tangents a lot because it is.
We should eventually. We could just do an episode where we just let everything go. Just do a big Star Wars episode.
So I'm a bit of a major Star Wars fan, but I agree with you. I think Lucas has got a lot of flack that has been undeserved, and I think now what's interesting with these new films that have come out is now everyone's giving those films the same flack that they gave Lucas's.
And the new films, for all intents and purposes, at least the first one, Force Awakens, was giving the fans what they've been claiming they wanted.
Yeah.
Like, looking back, while I don't necessarily I love the prequels in a weird way because I grew up with them.
Me too.
But they don't hold my attention as well as they used to.
Yep.
But I commend Lucas for trying something different. Like, I'm not talking about like the way he shoots lightsaber battles and all that shit. It's like he was trying more complex. He was trying to build that world more.
That's what Lucas is really great at, is building worlds and an atmosphere. You know, story-wise, he sometimes gets too caught up in mythology, and he gets too caught up in writing his own stuff, because when he writes it, obviously his dialogue is atrocious.
I was going to say Garbo, but that works too.
Yeah. But man, does he know how to build a universe. You know, you look at those prequel films, and those planets that they're on are fleshed out and beautiful and well thought out. And granted, they're well thought out because it's not just Lucas making them either. It's a bunch of other talented artists that he's hired around him to help build those planets. And I mean, he's putting a stamp of approval on everything, but he does have this great ability to collaborate and create this hive mind to make a film.
He lets creative people be creative. And he's the first one. And like, the prequel films are some of the most successful independent films of all time because he didn't have anyone bankrolling those. He produced them himself.
And that's something, too, that I think when I think about Lucas and why people need to, quote-unquote, leave him alone, it's because, A, he's got guts, being able to be like, okay, I'm going to throw my own money at all this. You know, he's got guts betting on himself to begin with the first Star Wars. And then they just continually do that is something that should be commended. And then second off, like, as a person, that dude is amazing. The amount of like philanthropic work that he's done because of the money he's made from Star Wars, which is not something he had to do, is like something that's commendable. And to me, I'm like, leave the dude alone. Like, he does not deserve your flack.
But Kyle, he approved Jar Jar Binks.
Oh, never mind, I guess. I guess all of the
all I can say is Jar Jar Binks is just the newer version of C-3PO, annoying, a character no one wanted, but you know, what are you gonna do?
Anyway,
back onto Duel.
Yeah.
So at the very beginning of this, when we were just kind of meandering near the beginning, you were talking about the most Scorsese, Spielberg, Warner you have ever seen. Tell me a little bit about. I feel like I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah. So he's going into the diner. I believe he's going into the diner. From outside, he's walking in. You've got someone who's telling, because he's asking where the bathroom is, and they're telling him, "Oh, you go straight, then you take a left, and then it's 2 doors on the right." It's kind of like actually a little like the directions are a little long, which I find kind of funny. But then he's walking through this diner, and it follows him. It's moving ahead of him, like the camera's looking at his face, and it's following him through the diner into the bathroom, closes the door in the bathroom, and just sort of takes a few moments to himself. And it just like it's like the opposite shot of Goodfellas.
Yeah.
Even though I think I'm pretty sure Duel definitely came out before Goodfellas, but it's just like one of those like, oh, this is a one shot.
Yeah. The one thing I will say though, I love that cafe scene. Like other than like the kind of on the nose narration, like just watching him put together who he thinks the person is, like everything from going off the boots to just watching the way people watch him, and then him slapping that guy's sandwich. He slapped my sandwich. It's like, you finished that sandwich. Shut up.
But that's like what you're talking about. With suspense, that is a great sequence of suspense.
Yeah. It builds up the paranoia, builds up the idea of not knowing. He knows the truck driver's there, and I love to. We never figure, and then like Spielberg does a great job of like misleading us. So because there's that one, I think it might be the person you were saying who
looks like Henry Fonda.
Yeah, where it's kind of like he's kind of giving him weird looks, and he focuses most on his face and everything. And then like when you eventually see him walking towards the truck and he pulls out in his own truck, it's like that's just brilliantly done.
Well, and it's really like what gets me about that scene is you see the cowboy boots of the first guy, and you're like, oh, that's the guy. And then it like very quickly shows you like, oh, here's this Henry Fonda lookalike. He's got some boots that look similar, and now you're in your own mind.
That's the guy. You're trying to remember what those boots looked like.
And then later on, there's another set of boots, and you're like, oh gosh, I don't even remember anymore. And it's totally like what you would do if you were an actual person in this situation.
and then like he's trying to figure it out. It's like, what if I just talk to the guy? Biggest thing I thought of that he should have done. Why didn't he just go home? Would the truck have followed him back towards the city?
I thought about that too. I think that I think the truck probably would have, but it does, like, the minute he goes, oh, I'm definitely going to be late for my meeting, I'm like,
he's
go
dedicated.
back to your wife, because she's angry at you, so at least make something happen. The biggest thing to me that he should have done is in that diner, been like, who's the asshole in the truck? And
right?
Then you don't have to guess.
And then the second biggest thing he should have done in that diner is added some meat to that sandwich.
That's true.
Who just gets Swiss on rye? And he spelt out rye.
Yes, R-Y-E.
It's like, are you from New York originally? Like, why are you so particular about your rye bread? I don't know. I thought that was pretty great.
What's really cool about that character is he is definitely a fish out of the water. Not only is the car that he's in just, kind of look like this nice city slicker car, but the clothes that he's wearing is different than everyone else around him too. And then him just saying that R-Y-E as if he thinks of himself as a little higher than
I'm sure like that woman rolled her eyes so hard at that. I was like, I know what rye bread is.
Right.
Like,
but she gave him a jump scare. So
yeah. Something else I was gonna say too. I want to talk about Good Guy Truck Driver for a second.
Okay.
Where like I love what the truck gets the kids out of the ditch.
Yeah.
Like completely not necessary, other than just like I can't even think of like why the truck would do it.
Yeah. I don't know why, unless to me it's like another. The whole time the truck driver is psychologically manipulating the guy, right? and the guy's trying to figure out if he's bad or not, even though like he clearly is. When he's pushing that the school bus out, you know, it cuts back to him and he's kind of like, maybe he's all right, you know, for another second. It's just like this really strange, like, when you've like had enough of this guy and you're like, okay, this truck driver, he's the shits, he's awful. He does do like one little thing, whether it's the wave, like, oh, come on, you can.
Yeah, and like, cause the wave too, I was like, well, maybe he's like finally being like, okay, I'm done fucking with you.
Right.
But then for me, the moment that it like was when he plowed through that phone booth. It's like, oh, this truck, because like I kept thinking, it's like what does he just want to? Because I kept thinking, oh, does he want to just beat up the car? Like, is he actually out to kill him?
Sure.
But then once he rolled through that, because I assumed that he was on the phone with the police. As soon as he did that, I was like, oh no, this truck driver is going to kill this guy.
Yeah, totally.
But he's not going to use his hands.
No.
He's going to use his truck.
One thing you were saying earlier was that this film is, you know, it's a horror film, but it's not. It's an action film, that's not. And in many ways, I feel like that is something that Spielberg does in general with his films. You know, you look at Indiana Jones, and it's one part, you know, it's 2 parts action, 1 part humor, 1 part romance. And that is true, I think, of a lot of good, just high quality sort of box office films, as they have a bunch of elements. But I think Jaws too, you know, it's weird. Like, for me, Jaws is not a horror film. For a lot of people it is. But for some reason it's not to me, and I think it's because there's so many like dramatic elements that are built into that film that I sort of like feel it's more of a drama than it's a horror film, even though it is definitely got a lot of horror in it.
Do you think Jurassic Park's a horror film?
No, not at all.
Because for a lot of people that is as well.
Right, and to me it's much more sci-fi action adventure than it is horror. But that's, again, it's a film that has the action, has the adventure, but it has horror to it.
Oddly enough, Spielberg has said in interviews that like he always wanted to make a straight horror film, but once he had the clout to make whatever project he wanted to, he couldn't, because he became, for lack of a better term, kind of became that family-friendly director.
Got trapped into his own
and thing. There's always been a lot of debate back and forth about Poltergeist, who directed, who didn't. I was listening to a podcast one time with the camera op on that movie, who says they technically both did direct it, but Spielberg brought Hooper on because, 1, he was trying to help him out, and 2, Hooper came on knowing that Spielberg wanted to get a chance to direct some of these horror scenes without having to put his name on something.
Sure.
Because he also had like the issue where he couldn't, because he was directing another film at the time, he couldn't technically direct to, it became a whole thing. So he essentially brought Hooper on as like a fall guy. That's wrong way to say it, not a fall guy, but like
as a vehicle.
Yeah, as a vehicle, and like, let's direct this together, because it definitely you can feel Spielberg in there, you can feel Hooper in there, and like, it's been said before that Spielberg is kind of overbearing sometimes, like on set, but I don't feel like it's ever done in a way to be a jerk. I think he just likes making movies so much.
Yeah.
But I've always been curious to see what Spielberg could have done. Like I heard, I wish I could remember a site where I've heard this from before, because like Spielberg said, "Oh, I've had horror movie ideas that would scare the pants off people. I just can't do them." And like, apparently he had an idea for E.T. 2 at one point, where it was going to be Elliot and his friends and everything trying to communicate with E.T. And they send a signal out there, and a ship comes, and it's actually a different species of aliens, and they get kidnapped and essentially tortured for 90 minutes, and then E.T. shows up at the very end and saves them. I was like, he wanted to make a movie about kids getting tortured by aliens. Cool.
I want to see that movie because I want to see E.T. try to save.
He just waddles in.
Right.
He comes in like a big mech suit, like at the end of Aliens.
This is what I will say about this, Spielberg, if you're ever listening. make your damn horror movie.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want.
Yeah,
You're
like
Steven Spielberg.
yeah, you can like, and especially like with scenes in Ready Player One, you've shown that you've got a love for the horror genre.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say that recreation of the Shining Hotel was pretty great. And then, yes, you've got burning stories you want to tell, like The Post and Lincoln and everything, but
And those are great too.
do something fun.
Right.
Do something you want to do.
Yeah, do something you want to do. Do something you've never done before, and just go for it. That's that's something that I think, like, when we talk about style directors, my big problem with style directors is that they can't get out of their style. They can't, and everything becomes sort of too similar.
And that's one thing I think that Marty Scorsese did really well is not every movie feels like Goodfellas or Casino.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the problem is that people complain when a director that is known for a style like leaves it. Like I think about Scorsese in the 2000s with I'm trying to think of when it started, but I know with like Gangs of New York and then Aviator.
I liked both of those movies.
I love Aviator, but those are movies that like are not films that people talk about because they don't fit the Scorsese style.
Aviator is what Leo should have won the Oscar for. But that's just me.
I hear you. I thought that was one of his best performances, maybe his best of all time. And yeah, it bugs me that some people get too used to a style that when they see a director leave it, that they have to like hate them for it. But then when so many directors just keep going with what they do and then they just become stale.
It's the same thing in professional wrestling.
Totally.
Think about how many times before Roman Reigns was the object of everyone's hate, it was John Cena. And anytime John Cena would try something new and get out of his so people would be like, oh, he's too boring. He does the same thing every match. So he starts breaking out new moves, doing new things. I remember the first time he hit a springboard stunner. Yeah. I'm like, where was this? Yeah. People are all like, oh, he's just bastardizing this stuff and go back to what you're good at. And
he's trying too hard.
I'm like, so what do you want from these people?
Right.
What do you want from John Cena? What do you want from Martin Scorsese or Steven Spielberg? Like, just be happy for what we're getting. Like, with Martin Scorsese, like, the man has got more energy than filmmakers half his age. Like, I remember Wolf of Wall Street and American Hustle came out the same year, and Wolf of Wall Street was what felt like the film made by a young, energetic filmmaker out there to prove a point, and American Hustle felt like it was the film made by a salty old filmmaker who doesn't know how to get out of their style, and in fact those roles are reversed.
Totally. Yeah.
And David O. Russell was just trying to be Scorsese and not doing it very well.
Yeah, that movie to me was a huge letdown because of that.
Yeah.
I didn't understand the people that really got behind that film because I'm like, it just feels like a Scorsese ripoff.
Yeah, it just feels like it's just not as good. Where like, while Wolf of Wall Street definitely had the Scorsese style, it was just so youthful and energetic.
Well, it takes a lot of risks. Like the lead character is not a character you really like.
No.
Yeah, and I mean I know a lot of people who don't like Wolf of Wall Street because they just think it's too hedonistic. But I think what I kind of like about that film is it is taking sort of that root of what Scorsese is known for, and it's throwing a slight variation on that Goodfellas story, and just letting excess be excess.
Yeah. And so like it's for Spielberg and where he's done so much, he could realistically just silently retire and not do or even just I would have never in a million years figured he would follow The Post with Ready Player One. Say what you want about Ready Player One, but it's a drastically different type of movie that he's been making the last couple of years. Well, I guess not because he did Tintin and did the BFG.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
But so when he did The Post, I was like, oh, so he's kind of going back to that Schindler's List. He wants to tell a personal story. And then I would have never have guessed that he'd even want to do Ready Player One, because it didn't feel like it would be something he'd want to do. So it's it just shows that he's a man who you don't know what to expect from him.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you're bringing up BFG and the other one, Tintin.
Yeah.
So it seems like the last, I don't know, decade and a half, it's been these historical dramas, and then coupled with these very CGI intensive action films.
Yeah.
Or maybe Tintin, and they're more adventure films, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of interesting that he is doing his action stuff, but it's in a different sort of way.
Mm-hmm.
Where he is going back to what we were talking about, embracing CGI and computer effects to do it. But it's those first two, Tintin and BFG, are much more like kid friendly, obviously.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that he sort of was able to get himself out of just doing action, and into doing some drama stuff. Because I think films like The Post, and even to an extent like Lincoln, are really good films in his filmography that people should check out. I loved The Post. I thought that went very underrated.
I still have to see it.
Yeah, that's one you should check out. The performances are top notch, but that story is just told well. It's told stylishly. It's got a few of those oneers, and it's just like, it's a really sort of, in a way, like poetic kind of film that you feel like you would have gotten in the 70s or 80s about reporting.
Yeah.
And I mean, granted, it took place, it was a Nixon sort of story, but it really is underrated. So I love that he was able to get out of just doing action adventure and into doing other kinds of historical things. Now though, I think he's done enough of them, so he can now do something else he haven't done.
And that's what I'd like to see him do, is just like I said. I guess he kind of did that with Ready Player One. I want to see him do things that people aren't expecting, and that was definitely one I didn't see coming.
Yeah, I just wish I'd liked that movie.
That's fair. He's had as many hits as he had. I feel like a couple misses is never a bad thing. It's a good way to ground you as a filmmaker.
It's true. Well, I think nobody should take the Tarantino advice of, do 10 movies and then you're out, because then you're going to start making bad movies. Like, I don't care. You can keep Spielberg, to me, I know he's going to do this. He should make movies until he's dead, because he might come out with a few bad ones, but there's going to be some really great ones.
Honestly, what Hitchcock did.
Yeah.
It's getting so bad to the point where he could barely move, but he still wanted to make movies. Right. And I feel like that old adage of filmmaking is a young man's game is only true if you let it be, because there's nothing out there dictating age. Steven Spielberg and Martin Scorsese, they still can make youthful films. To me, Quentin being like, after a certain point, you got to give up. To me, that sounds like a filmmaker admitting defeat. That I'm running out of ideas, running out of things I want to do. Because like Howard Hawks and John Ford were making movies well into their old age. Were all of them great? No, but they wanted to make them.
Right, and that's like, to me, Tarantino's taking out the challenge of being a filmmaker by being like, at this point, once I made 10, then it's good. Like, because he's worried about making a failure. Like, don't worry about making a failure. Just try to make good stories. If you make a failure once in a while, who cares?
Yeah.
But we say that, and then we talk about how like Lucas tarnished his legacy by making films that people didn't want to see or whatever. And I think that filmmakers nowadays, especially with fans being as vocal as they are, they have to worry about this whole tarnishing of a legacy, because people will, you make one bad movie and people like want your neck for it. I just hope that people instead,
he was a fluke.
Yeah. Instead, I want people to, I want filmmakers to just be relentless, keep on making films.
Yeah, like one of my favorite things to do is to find a filmmaker I like and to hear what their favorite movie that they made is and what their least favorite. because that way it's kind of an interesting look. Like, for example, I'm a big Brian De Palma guy. He's one of my favorites. His favorite film that he made was Carlito's Way.
Okay.
It's not a film that a lot of people talk about, and for my tastes, I don't think it's one of his best, but he thinks that's the best one he made from begin to end, and just it kind of has everything. He kind of described his thesis statement of filmmaking.
What is do you know what Spielberg's favorite and least favorite are?
I've not looked too deeply into that. I'd be kind of curious to find out. Hell, I can cut out the dead air. Let's see if I can quick do a Google search and find out what Spielberg's favorite directed film is.
I know, I wonder, like, least favorite, part of me thinks Schindler's List for the fact of the emotional impact that had on him. But then at the same time, like, he made Jurassic Park right after? Or
no, he did Jurassic Park,
right
Schindler's List, then Jurassic Park 2.
Right.
Like, that was a weird couple years.
But, he shoots Jurassic Park, and then it's in post. Because I remember listening to him talk about how he listened to the soundtrack of Jurassic Park on the way to set for Schindler's List, which is the weirdest thing ever to think about. But part of him, I think, also like didn't care about Jurassic Park because he was making this movie that he cared so much about at the same time.
Yeah.
So I'm curious as to what his favorite and least favorite are, just because it's a strange, like, emotionally, he went through some strange.
Yeah, I'm looking it up and see if I can find it relatively quickly, and I'm on like a website that's given like factoids or whatever about him. Apparently, he's a big video game guy. He's a big gamer.
No.
Yep.
Get out of here.
He likes first-person shooters. So we'll just let that sink in a little bit.
Jeez.
That Steven Spielberg is a huge fan of first-person shooters.
Maybe all this, I guess Battlefront's technically a third person. Maybe someday I'll be playing Star Wars Battlefront and Spielberg will be on.
How great would that be?
Taking me down as an Ewok.
I found an article. Spielberg says naming a favorite of his many films is the toughest question to answer. So he doesn't have a direct answer, but the ones they seem to be talking about a lot is he mentions Duel, E.T., looks like Jaw. So it looks like this is mentioning a bunch of his big ones. So I got to do a little more research on this, but I'm curious to see what his personal favorite is.
I love that Duel is on that list as like potentially one of his favorite like films that he's directed.
Mm-hmm.
Because you were saying, I'm not sure if you said this on air here or right before, but like he made that film in 13 days, which is a crazy short amount of time to make something.
And of all those stunts and everything, it's crazy to think nowadays movies. I don't want to say movies are easier because that's not the case. There's a lot more that goes into making movies.
Yep.
But as things become less and less real, I feel it's weird how things take more and more time.
Yeah. Well, I think it's because people aren't disciplining themselves.
Yeah. Like, this entire film is one long car chase. What'd they do? They got cars and they crashed them into each other. Now they would, shoot a plate and create a car, do a previs of it, and it's a whole fucking thing.
Think about, though, if you go back and watch that film again, just how much is on this open road with the mountains and terrain that you can kind of tell where it is, but it all kind of looks the same.
Mm-hmm.
I think that shooting a lot of that car chase stuff, besides them like crashing into each other or whatever, that stuff was all probably shot really quick.
Yeah.
I would think.
And so, I don't know. It's always something I've been thinking about because it becomes more and more a thing where it's just easier. It's easier on the set to do these things, but is it realistically easier? So, like, think about if you want to do like a big green screen movie, how many people you have to hire just to make that work. Where I don't know. I feel like it's in the long run it'd just be easy to crash a car.
Do you know if Spielberg storyboarded Duel?
I'm not 100% sure. I feel like I'd like to imagine he. I've heard mixed things about how Spielberg does this, because he said he used to be like a storyboard nut.
Yep.
But then like I think like there's been some projects, especially something like Jaws, where he said he just gets on set and just figures it out. So I'd like to imagine, and I'm going to stress that I don't know this for sure. I'm just going off of what I think. I'd like to imagine early on he probably did.
Yeah, because it's one of those things, you think about now as filmmakers, like this idea of making movies and, just trying to, it feels very like a uphill battle trying to make a good film. And you think of like someone like Spielberg who shot a film in 13 days and you go, man, is that possible? Can we do it? Can you make a movie in 13 days and have it be really good? And it is possible. I think it is possible in this day and age to still do it. But the reason you're able to make a film in 13 days, shooting it in 13 days, is because you're probably putting in a lot of prep time.
Yeah. I would like, something like Jaws where it went like 100 days over budget. Like that point, like, fuck it. There's not much else you can do.
Yeah.
If your shark's not working, just make it up, figure it out.
I can't even, 100 days. That's just insane.
Yeah, it was scheduled for like 50 some odd days and he went like 156.
Jeez.
Hell, if I keep people an hour past, I'm like, oh man, everyone's going to hate me.
That's right. That movie though, not to get off of Duel, but there's so much humanity in Jaws to me. I just every time I think of Jaws, I don't think of the shark sequence. I think of the scene with him and his kid where they're sort of mimicking each other.
It's one of the most understated scenes in that, because everyone when they think of Jaws, they cite the Indianapolis speech, which is fantastic.
Absolutely.
But that little character piece between Brody and his son, and just like a couple little things throughout the film that Brody does are what works, because Duel is man versus machine, but we never get the humanity, because when he made Duel, they said, well, this is great, you're great with moving pictures and doing stunts and everything, but we don't know if you can we don't know how well you know actors. And granted, he worked with like Joan Crawford early on in his career, and Joan Crawford's not going to sweat a fool, let me tell you. But then he made Sugarland Express, which is like a kind of a tender Lovers on the Run movie, and then he does Jaws, which is kind of like a culmination of both of those together, and shows that, hey, I know actors, I know characters, and I know how to put a scene together. And going back to what I was saying before about he can schmooze his way with the producers, he can work with actors, and he knows the camera. So much so that he chooses to be behind the camera as much as possible. Like he wants to shoot it hands on.
I don't.
No,
some more power to him.
Maybe I'd get more stuff done if I shoot my own stuff. But I was like, nah, there's people out there better at it than I am.
Yeah.
I think we've kind of exhausted the topic of Duel on this one, and a little bit of everything in between. So I guess the final thing I'm going to ask you is, we talked about it a little bit. We've talked a lot about Steven Spielberg. Has had a hell of a career. He's done a lot. Is there a film in his filmography that you feel like more people should see?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I know I asked the question without preparing myself. I need to bring up his filmography.
Yeah, I'm trying to
Here, I'll bring it up and you can take a look.
Well, I own quite a bit of his films. The film to me that is it's hard to say if it's underrated because it's still a popular film. That's the thing with Spielberg, is most of his films are popular.
Mm-hmm.
I love Minority Report.
That's one I'll admit that I have not seen.
Oh man, that to me is that's shameless worthy. That's in my top 5 of Spielberg, Minority Report's definitely in there.
It is hard because, like you said, that so many of his films are popular. I've always loved Catch Me If You Can.
Catch Me If You Can's great.
Because it kind of Catch Me If You Can kind of felt like Spielberg doing a Scorsese film.
Okay, yeah, totally.
But the one I've always really liked that gets a lot of flack from people is Always.
I've never seen it.
It a romantic comedy starring Richard Dreyfuss about a pilot who passes away, but is still has a connection with his wife. Nice. It's kind of a schmaltzy film, but it makes me feel good. So,
I think Color Purple is another one that I think is really good. And then, like I said earlier, I mean, The Post is legitimately like top-notch Spielberg to me. But Minority Report is one of those films that maybe it's because I like Tom Cruise more than the average person, but it's also, it's this modern film noir that's weird and kind of crazy, and has just a wonderful story to it, and a wonderful like color palette to it too. So I love Minority Report and can't say enough about how much I think everyone should see that for Spielberg.
Well, for those of you who are listening, there's 2 recommendations for you guys. I still think everyone should go see Duel. I want to thank Kyle for being on the show. Like I said, the future of the show is that it's going to happen no matter what. How it's going to happen, I'm still working on. Like I said, Nick had to take some time off. Beginning of the show, there should be a message from him kind of explaining it. Like I said, so Nick hasn't been fired from the show and he hasn't walked away from it. He just needs a little bit of time off. So I'm going to respect that and I'm going to keep it going. So people like Kyle are going to help me do that, because a show like this I can't do on my own. So I need people like him.
I'm happy to be a
Before we go, is there anything cool that you're working on that you want people to at least be aware of?
Well, we kind of talked about it a little bit in vague detail. I'm currently working on a documentary about sort of the science of paleontology and how people dig up fossils. So that's sort of been in production now. If you want to find me on Facebook or Twitter or anything like that, you can follow the story. I post some stuff on Instagram too. I think my Instagram handle is the Carp, spelled with a K instead of a C, 14.
Yep, that's the. I hate that I know your Instagram handle off the top of my head.
So I'm working on that. A month ago, I had a music video for a band called Devil's Teeth that came out that I co-directed. And then there's a short film called Corvus that I produced that'll hopefully be screening at a bunch of film festivals coming up. So, yeah.
Cool. And then, as always, you can find me at Michael_Viers on Instagram. I'm hoping to get the show its own Instagram page. I feel like that could be beneficial. I just haven't gotten off my butt yet to do it. Facebook, the show you can find on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, Stitcher Radio, SoundCloud, and apparently it's popping up in other podcast services as well. And this episode should be released this coming Friday, which is the 25th, I believe.
No, today's the 4th.
Oh, wait. When do I think this is? Hold on. This episode will be released this coming Friday on the 7th. Why did I think it was the 25th? That was weird.
I guess you don't need to tell people that because they'll be listening on the 7th.
That's true, but the reason I want to mention it is because on the 8th, so technically that'd be tomorrow when you're listening to this, I will be moderating a panel for the Milwaukee Short Film Festival. It will be happening at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'll be talking with some local filmmakers about being a filmmaker in Milwaukee and then transcending past that. So come out and see that and come support local film.
That sounds well worth everyone's time.
Yeah, I agree. Cool.